Here are some quarterbacks, tight ends, and defense and special teams to consider streaming rostered in under 50% of ESPN leagues if you are looking. Jimmy G versus the Chargers. Debo just logged a full practice. Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. He has great playmakers around him. In 7 appearances, he scored 16-plus fantasy points in 5 of them. He may not have the upside to win you your matchup, but he's a reliable spot start if you need it. Revenge game, Jacoby Brissett versus the Miami Dolphins. Brissett is coming off of a season-high 20.32 fantasy points in Week 8 before the bye. Not a ton of huge fantasy weeks, but he's thrown for over 250 passing yards in 3 straight games. Miami is a top 10 offense in points scored per game, but defensively, they're giving up the 10th most passing yards per game, and they are the best fantasy matchup for quarterbacks, so that creates a pretty good game script. Surprised he's still rostered on this site for under 50%, but Greg Dulcich versus Tennessee. Across his only 3 NFL games played, weeks 6 through 8, he's the overall tight end 3, averaging 12.1 fantasy points. Scored in week 6, 14 targets across his last 2 games, 87 receiving yards in week 8, a lot of good signs. The Titans are a top 10 matchup in points per game given up to tight ends. Cade Otton versus Seattle. Cameron Brate might be back after missing 4 out of 5 of their last games, but you have to point to what Cade Otton's done. Weeks 5 through 9, he's seen 7, 3, 5, 5, and 6 targets. 2 out of 3 of his last games played, he's netted over 60 receiving yards. He scored a touchdown last week and had a season-high 17.8 fantasy points. Cole Kmet faces Detroit, who is a plus matchup in points per game given up to all positions. 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games after not scoring at all in 2021 is nice. Great signs from last week. A season-high 6 targets, 3rd game of 40-plus receiving yards. He scored 2 touchdowns. Chicago was creative and had him run the ball twice. Season-high 22 fantasy points. For defense and special teams, the Giants are facing the Houston Texans offense that is scoring the 5th least scoreboard points per game this season. The Cardinals face the Rams, but Matt Stafford is still in concussion protocol. If he doesn't play, they would face John Wolford, the backup, and a running back room that's been unimpressive. Last, the Raiders face the Colts offense, who across the last 3 games have scored 10, 16, and 3 points. They're facing Sam Ehlinger, who has not looked great so far.